Hi, this is Brian Fogarty, and this is a video for Chapter 4 of the book Quantitative Social Science Data with R, the second edition. So in this video, what we're going to do is we're going to look at reading in data into R. So this is, how do you get the data? How do you get the data into R? What do you do? So generally, we call it reading in or opening, which is probably more common from the sort of Microsoft world. But to get data into R, we call it reading in data, and then saving data, we call it writing. So reading and writing, very, very nice. Okay, so I've already opened up a R Markdown file here, saved it, included a title, included a subtitle. I've set my library path and set my working directory. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to load in some of the versions of the 2020 Scottish Index of Multiple Deprivation. So in the chapter, I have a whole bunch of versions. We're not going to do all of them because it's a little ridiculous. But we'll look at some common ones. So the type of the file format that the data will be saved in, a lot of times it depends on the field, right? So the most generic often is CSV. A lot of times we see Excel, but then in terms of loading it from other software like Stata or SPSS or SAS, that will, that often depends on your field and what is commonly used. Like what is the norm if it's not R, say, or Python. One of the nice things about R is that you can load in data in any single format. It really doesn't matter. You just have to find the right function to do it, and the right function exists. Okay, so we're going to start with the CSV file, which I think is probably the most common one we come across. So there are default ways, with base R, there are default functions for some of this. For reading in a CSV file, it's read.csv is the function. But we're going to use tidyverse. We're going to use, so we're going to load tidyverse, but it's going to load readr. And there's some functions within that. There's other ones we're going to look at too. All right, so let's just get started. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to load tidyverse, which I think I already have loaded, so it's not going to give me all that information. Yeah, okay. All right, so we have that loaded. Now we can use the function. And the function we're going to use is read_CSV. So instead of read dot or read period or read full stop CSV, it's read underscore. I'm going to save it. Okay, so R is object-oriented programming. So we're going to create an object that's our data. And we could do that with the assignment operator, which is the sort of left-facing arrow. You can also use equals. I know people who are used to using Python use equals. That they'll use equals in R because that's still works. Okay, so I'm going to call it CSV data. So I'm creating an object called CSV data. That's going to be our data. I know, very ingenious. And then it's read_CSV. And then in quotes, the name of the file. And the file's got to be, the name you put in has to be exact. You can't, it has to be, it's case specific, can't have any errors. And it's got to be, that data has to be in the working directory that you set. Otherwise, it will say, like, I can't find this data. All right, so we're going to do simd2020.csv. That's the name of it. All right. You can see here, actually, our automatically, or RStudio automatically comes up and gives you a whole bunch of the options that are available. A lot of times you don't necessarily need all of them. It really depends on the data. I don't know. People have different preferences. I like to, a lot of times, if it's CSV or Excel file or something, just go into Excel and make some corrections if it's super messy, instead of trying to program it or use code for it. Okay, there is one quirky thing with the SIMD file. It's how they specified, how the Scottish organization specified missing values, right? So missing values are situations where there's no data for some reason. You know, with surveys, it might be they didn't answer it, or they answered like, I don't know. Other times it could be like you're just missing data for whatever reason, like you couldn't get a measure for some country or some county or some city or something like that. So it's missing. In R, missing values are denoted with an NA. So I know like in Stata it's a period or dot or full stop. What they did here is they use a star or an asterisk. So what we need to do so that R reads it in correctly, or that specifically the read underscore CSV function reads it in correctly, is we need to specify what it looks like. All right, so we're going to do comma NA equals quote star. Okay. So let's, I'm going to highlight that and run that. Okay, so there's a few things to look at. One is R actually gives us some information here about it. So it tells us that there's 6,976 rows. So in this rectangular sort of standard data format, those are our observations. All right, the rows are observations. And then the columns, there's 38 of them, those are our variables. Okay, it also tells us here information about the kinds of variables we have, which we'll look more at in a little bit, but it shows us that there's character, the CHR, so these are names, right? Something like that. The letters, sometimes they come in, they're read in incorrectly as characters. So it shows there's 3 of those, and then double, DBL, there's 35 of those. So doubles are just numeric of some sort. They could be integer, but they're numeric, and they're called double here. Okay. All right, so we have that. You can see up here in our environment window, we have this data now. It shows us that, it gives us the name. I'm just going to move this window a little. And that there's 6,976 observations, again, corresponding to the rows, and 38 variables corresponding to 38 columns. Okay. We'll look at this a little bit more in a minute, but we can click on this little icon to see the data, but we're going to do that in a different video. All right. Okay. So let's say that we have an Excel file, which is also very common, especially if you're using data, like secondary data from government sources. A lot of times the data is created in an Excel file, which I used to, I mean, I don't love Excel, but Excel files used to be a real pain in the butt to use in R, and now I don't think they're as difficult, partially because we can use this package readxl, which is part of tidyverse, but it's not loaded with the main ones. But let's load this. So this is specifically to load Excel files. So let's load a version of the SIMD data that's an Excel file. So we're going to do, I'm just going to call it xlsx, which is the file suffix of Excel nowadays. All right, I'm going to use the assignment operator, and the function is read underscore xlsx. Oh my god, this is a mouthful. All right, and then quote SIMD 2020 dot xlsx, and then we need to specify the missing. All right. I'm going to do NA equals quote and then star. Okay. All right, so it doesn't give us all that information again, but we can just see it right up here, right? The version has the same number of observations, same number of variables. Okay. The last thing that I want to look at in this video, again, the chapter has a whole bunch of versions. I want to look at loading different data from different software, saved in different software formats, statistical software. So in my field, Stata is very commonly used. So we come across a lot of Stata files, probably less so than it used to be, but still. And there is a package that allows us to read in Stata as well as SPSS and SAS. And the package is called Haven. And this is also by the tidyverse folks, but it's not loaded with, I don't think, right? It's not loaded with, or maybe it is. I don't know. Anyway, I'm going to load it in. It's better to reload it because there's no harm to it. Anyway, so let's load or read in a Stata data file. Okay, so it is, we're going to name this one DTA because that's how Stata, that's the file suffix for Stata. So DTA, and then data, and then the assignment operator, and then it's read underscore DTA, okay, and then SIMD 2020.DTA. This also has some options here, which we may or may not look at or need. You know, when you read in data, you might not know how clean it is. So there's some things that you can do when you read it in, depending on the function, to make it nice. Otherwise, what we could do is just recode it in some way and clean it up, which we'll do a lot of. All right, so let's just read that in. Okay, so we come up here. We see now there's an object DTA data. It has the same number of observations, same number of variables as before. Okay, again, this is just some examples. There are tons of examples in the chapter. Just remember that you can read in any type of data format into R. I'm sure there's some that you can't, but someone's working on a package that allows you to do it. All right, so that's it for this video. The next one, we're going to look at loading in data using the functionality from RStudio. All right, so that's it. Thanks for watching.